I think we're ready to start whenever you want to start, Sayyidna.
Great. I'd like to say good evening and welcome to all of you. Thank you for joining us. I think this presentation was planned together by the two offices from the two parties of family life and sanctity of life, and thanks to Linda and Alberta and Lynn, who's not able to join us tonight after what difficulties they had. And a special way, thank you for Marie's talk. But before we start everything, let's stop and say little prayer, ask the Lord to guide us during this meeting and presentation as well. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity to gather this evening together, so that we will listen to special presentation about the sanctity of life and the importance of life as well. Fill us with your wisdom and knowledge. May all our discussions be inspired by you, and will aim to serve our brothers and sisters. Assist us and help us to do what pleases you, not just this evening, but every moment of our life. And so that we'll always bring glory and honor to your name and serve our brothers and sisters. We ask this in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Again, thank you for coming together to this presentation. I've heard that presentation twice to Mary's, and I'm very happy to be part of it as well. This last summer at our clergy conference at the convention, Mary's was, I was grateful to her for finding the time to give a presentation to our clergy as well. And I attended also one time she came and made a presentation to also Synod of our bishops, Maronite bishops in Lebanon, back I think 2018, correct me or not, please. Marie's right now, Khouriye, she's married to Father Peter, who was little over a year now as a priest, and now they moved from New York to Richmond, Virginia. And she holds degrees in general chemistry and environmental engineering, and she's certified as well in Creighton Model Fertility Care Practitioner, supervisor and educator. And now she's taking her mission in so many ways to go around, and if I want to preach the good news in some ways about the sanctity of life as well. She has her center, what we call Cedar of Lebanon Fertility Care Center. And she was always in some ways in education. She was teaching at Catholic high school, all boys Catholic high school for so many years. And now she's devoting to promote the dignity of women and make sure that everyone is given the proper appreciation in that perspective as well. I know you know her. She was also in charge of she and her husband, Peter, they were in charge of the family life office as well for some time in the eparchy of St. Mary. And I'm sure now you will all benefit from her presentation that could help in so many ways many couples who have difficulties having babies, or they want to do what proper in God's eyes as well. The floor is yours, Marie, to enrich us tonight.
Thank you so much, Sayyidna. Thank you for the invitation to be here tonight. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to share with couples and with women the great news of Creighton Model Fertility Care System. As you said, it is really great news that unfortunately a lot of people are not aware of it. So my hope is that this night will help people become more aware of it, more educated in it, and help us to spread the word about it. I'm gonna share my screen so that this way, when we get to the science part, you can all see. I'm not going to talk a lot about the theology behind it, but I'll touch on it hopefully in the Q&A. So I titled this presentation, Strengthening Marriages and Empowering Girls, Women, and Couples Through Fertility Care, because through this knowledge, we're really empowering people and strengthening marriage and building a culture of life in a women's healthcare. Before I start talking in more details about what I do, I just want to share with you how did I get to become a practitioner and educator, as Sayyidna said in the introduction. So many years ago, about over 18 years ago, when my husband and I got married, I was still living in Lebanon, so everyone was like, you have to take the birth control pill because you cannot get pregnant. Because if you get pregnant, you won't be able to come to the States in the next few months when you're supposed to. However, I refused to take the birth control pill because I just remembered when I was in high school, they spoke about it in a negative way, and they even called it means of killing, wasa al qatl. So I decided not to take it, and I went to my pastor who told me about the calendar rhythm method, which is basically counting days in the cycle from the first day of the cycle of the menstrual period up to 14 days and count those as days of fertility and avoid having intercourse with my husband. And we used it for about 2 years and we felt it was working. And then when we tried to use it the other way around, we discovered that it's not effective and that it was kind of working because we had an infertility problem. And we found out we had a problem, and we were told that in vitro fertilization was our only option. I remember in this entire journey of infertility that encounter with the fertility specialist where the specialist told us we will make you babies in the lab, just just plain, no compassion, no love, nothing. It was just very painful. We were going to do that, but then once I find out more how it's done, I know some people have done it, some people will do it. I'm not passing judgment on anyone. Everyone has their own choices, their own decisions. Everyone have their own walks in life. I personally couldn't do it. I just did not accept the destruction of the embryos. I did not accept how the procedure is done. But we were left with really no choice until my friend found out about the St. Paul 6 Institute for the Study of Human Reproduction in Omaha, Nebraska, and she connected me with them. And after I explained our story, they said I need to start charting my cycles using the created model system so they can help me. And the first step to learning how to chart a cycle is basically to attend a PowerPoint presentation that we call an introductory session. I remember that same night, after attending the introductory session, waking up in the middle of the night, sitting in my bed, and saying to myself, God did not bring me to the United States of America just to be a chemistry teacher. He brought me here because He wants me to learn this and to teach it to other people. And that's when I took it on myself to become a practitioner. And then after I quit teaching high school, I became an educator and supervisor. And I've been dedicating the past few years, really full time in a way, to just spread the word, to educate people about it, because women deserve better, couples deserve better. They need to know about this. They need to know about alternatives to different approaches that are being offered as women's health care or as couple fertility treatment. So my hope is that this presentation will help people understand that when I got married, I was offered the birth control pill and the calendar rhythm method as the only method to avoid getting pregnant. I'm here to tell couples that there are other options, and it's time for them to find the freedom and their ability to choose effectively to avoid or achieve a pregnancy using a system that is scientifically available and it's morally acceptable. I know a lot of women, young adults, teenagers struggle with a lot of different symptoms: PCOS, PMS, regular bleeding, severe menstrual cramps, acne, heavy periods. And unfortunately, they are being offered only artificial hormones as their best options. And the artificial hormones really do not treat the problem. It kind of just is a band-aid approach. It looks like it's treating the symptoms, but it's not. I'm here to tell you there is another approach that is more effective, that really looks for the problem and treats it. For couples who are struggling with infertility, when they have been diagnosed with unexplained infertility, yesterday, actually 2 days ago, when I was coming back from Texas, I got a phone call from a client who has been struggling with infertility for at least 3 years, and the answer she got: unexplained infertility. So for those couples who are still asking why, those who are going through this painful journey of infertility, and when everything seems hopeless, I'm here to tell you it's time to explore a more effective science than IVF. So I'm here to touch on fertility care and NaProTECHNOLOGY in 3 areas: family planning, women's health, and for infertility treatment. But what is the fertility care, and what does that have to do with natural family planning, since this is under the umbrella of natural family planning, the ministry of NFP? So NFP is basically, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot I have this first. So it's time for a couple to discover, for every couple to discover what they really need to know and what every woman has a right to know. This slide actually just helps you understand that this is something that can be used throughout a woman's reproductive age. A teenage girl can start learning this as a young single woman. She can continue on using this in her life and all the way up to menopause. If she gets married, she can use it to have kids. If she's struggling with infertility, she can, with the help of NaProTECHNOLOGY, conceive. And this is something that can be used through her whole life. And how is that done? By tracking her cycle, something that can start from puberty all the way to menopause. This is an example here of a chart that is used to tracking what's happening in the woman's cycle using the created model fertility care system. And I'm going to talk about this in a little bit. So the created model system is one of the natural family planning methods that are available. And a lot of people don't know what NFP is, but I know that unfortunately, a lot of people have misconception about NFP, and it's a term that a lot of dioceses are even avoiding using it these days because a lot of people equate it with the rhythm method. A lot of people are turned off by it and they don't want to listen more. I personally don't say much. I'm an NFP teacher. I say I'm a fertility care practitioner. I teach fertility care, and the conversation can go on and I can explain more. So NFP is a general term for scientific, natural, moral methods of family planning that can help married couples either achieve or postpone pregnancy or avoid a pregnancy. And they are based on observing and tracking naturally occurring biological markers in the woman's body, so signs and symptoms of the fertile and infertile phases of a woman's menstrual cycle. Depending on the signs, the method can be classified, and it can be classified under three major methods. So the cervical mucus methods are the one that relies only on the tracking of the cervical fluid that get discharged from the woman's body, like the method that I teach, the fertility care, like the Billings ovulation method. There is the symptothermal method, which relies on the temperature in addition to the cervical fluid, and there is also the symptohormonal method, like Marquette, which relies on the hormone in addition to temperature and the cervical fluid. So I'm not going to talk about all three methods in detail. I'm going to focus on really the created model fertility care system because it gives us a window into women's fertility and it helps with treatment of infertility through NaProTECHNOLOGY. So this is an example of a chart using the created model fertility care system. So these are the days of the menstrual flow. These are days of dryness, which we call days of infertility. And these days here, charted with white stamps with baby on them, are all days of fertility. And that's when the woman observes the cervical fluid that makes her fertile. What I want to point to here to show you the correlation between the hormone levels in the woman's body and the production of this cervical fluid or its absence. When the estrogen levels, which are produced by the ovaries before ovulation, when those levels are high, the woman observes that cervical fluid. So the presence of this cervical fluid is an indicator that ovulation is approaching. And the presence of this cervical fluid is what makes a woman fertile, because if intercourse happens, the sperm can go in and can dorm in the woman's body until the egg is released and it can be ready to fertilize it. You'll notice in red the levels of progesterone. The progesterone is the hormone that is produced after ovulation, and it plays two roles. It stops the production of the cervical mucus, and it prepares the lining cells of the uterus for implantation in case a pregnancy happens. So notice here how when the progesterone levels in red are high, the woman observes a dryness. And that's when the woman would be infertile, no pregnancy will happen. So if a couple wish to use the system for their family planning purposes, so they have two ways of using it. If they want to use it to achieve a pregnancy, they would select days of fertility to have intercourse. And if they are couples of normal fertility, the pregnancy rate goes to 76% first cycle, 98% by sixth cycle. If a couple wish to use it to not get pregnant, so what they do, they select those days of infertility to have intercourse, and they would avoid having intercourse on those days and learn to share, to show affection to each other and share love on those days in a different ways. So here we see an example of a couple who selected days of fertility to have intercourse, and as a result of that, they got pregnant. So When they are using it to avoid a pregnancy, they just select days of infertility to have intercourse. But with every act of intercourse, there is openness to life. They're not using barriers, they're not using devices, they're not doing anything against God's plan for married love. So that's why this is something that the church would approve and the church would encourage people to embrace in their marriage, because God designed the woman's body in a way where the woman cannot be pregnant every time she has intercourse. It's only during the time of fertility that pregnancy can happen. So it's really way more than birth control. Is we don't even call it birth control. It's not a natural contraception. It can be used to achieve a pregnancy as well as to avoid a pregnancy, to monitor fertility, to treat infertility, and to treat different gynecological health problems. It's a true system of family planning. It's not contraceptive. It's not abortifacient. And I'm going to explain this using a little bit of anatomy and physiology because it's important that people understand what those two terms mean. When we say contraceptive, that means something is happening to stop the sperm and the mucus from coming together. So it stops conception from happening. So when intercourse happens and there is a time, it's a time of fertility, the sperm will go in and it will dorm in the cervical crypts here. If a woman is using a system like this one, when a couple have intercourse and they select days of infertility, the couple will not get pregnant because the sperm cannot penetrate, or it will die actually because of that dryness here. So that's why it's not contraceptive. It does not do anything to stop conception. It's just conception will not happen because that's how God designed it. It's not abortifacient, and this is a very important point that a lot of people don't know about hormonal birth control. Hormonal birth control can have four different mechanisms of actions. When I say hormonal birth control, I mean the birth control pill, the patch, the hormonal patch, the hormonal intrauterine devices, all those different devices or pills that the woman takes to basically have to contracept, and they have those artificial hormones in them. So, four mechanism of actions: it can stop ovulation from happening, or it can make the cervical mucus very thick so that the sperm would not be able to penetrate, it will die immediately. Or if the two mechanisms had failed, it will delay the transport of the cervical of the sperm to the egg so that they will not meet and conception will not happen. If those three mechanisms of actions failed, the pill has a fourth mechanism of action which makes it abortifacient. It can inhibit implantation, which means it can make the lining cells of the uterus very thin so that in case a pregnancy happens, in case the egg has been fertilized by the sperm, the fertilized egg cannot attach itself to the lining cells of the uterus. And it will be shed with the lining cells of the uterus, and it will look like it's a regular period, but in reality, it's not a regular period. It's actually a fertilized egg. And that's why there is a lot of argument about when life begins. Does it begin at conception or does it begin at implantation? Because if we agree it begins at conception when the egg and the sperm are united with each other, that means with the fourth mechanism of action, this life is not being allowed to continue to grow. And that's why we call it abortifacient. I remember a few years ago when I was a high school teacher to all boys, we had a club after school called the Crusaders for Life. And we were talking to them one day about abortion and contraception. I remember explaining slides similar to this one. And after I finished, I had one of my high school students, junior, James, he was 16 years old. He stood up and he stood up very angrily and he says, I can't believe this is happening in a woman's body. I think if women knows what it is doing to their body, they would stop taking the pill. And I told him, I wonder how many women just don't have any idea about how it works in their body. They don't even realize that they're suppressing their bodies from working the way God intended it to be. And sometimes we wonder why they struggle with infertility after being on the pill for so long. If we shut down our body from working the way it's meant to, it's very normal that sometimes it'll take it some time to recover from its impact. So it's not contraceptive, it's not abortifacient, and it's not the rhythm method. So it does not rely on just counting days. It relies on the observation of biological markers. So it's very important to understand what it's not, because a lot of people have misconception and they equate it with the rhythm method. And it's also 100% organic. It's all natural. No devices, no barriers, nothing is being used. No chemicals are being dumped in the woman's body. It's funny, we live in a time where everyone wants to eat healthy, to go organic, to exercise. Yet when it comes to their fertility, they tend to go completely opposite way. The Creighton model fertility care system can be used for three main things. It can be used to monitor, maintain, and evaluate women's gynecological health from puberty to menopause. So it can be used by teenage girls, by young adults, by adult women, by religious sisters, single women, married women. And they can use it to monitor, maintain, evaluate their health. For the first time, this is something that they can do through the Creighton model system and NaProTECHNOLOgy. It can be used by couples to avoid a pregnancy or to achieve a pregnancy. And just a simple decision, a couple can switch intention in using it to avoid or to achieve, which is something they cannot do with contraceptive devices. They cannot do with any contraceptive method that they use. The Creighton model system had standardized the mucus sign, and this standardization allowed the system to be used extensively in a variety of medical applications. After Dr. Hilgers, who is one of the co-founders or co-developers of the Creighton model system, after he developed the Creighton model system, he noticed after many years of seeing charts of women struggling with different gynecological problems, whether it's PCOS or miscarriages or endometriosis or other health problems, he noticed patterns in those charts. And as a result of those patterns, NaProTECHNOLOgy came to light, which is a new life-affirming women's reproductive science that works cooperatively with the natural procreative cycle. And NaProTECHNOLOgy stands for Natural Procreative Technology. Dr. Hilgers emphasized on naming it natural procreative, not natural reproductive, because he wanted to emphasize on our role as a co-creator with God and to make the distinctions from animals. So NaProTECHNOLOgy, this new reproductive science, seeks out the underlying causes. If a couple struggle with infertility, come to our medical consultant. They try to find the problem, they try to repair it using current medical science, and then they facilitate conception through loving, self-given action of husband and wife. So they give them a chance to conceive naturally. In the same way, if a woman comes to our medical consultant or a young girl and she's suffering with PMS or polycystic ovarian disease or irregular bleeding and other symptoms, our doctors will try to find out exactly what's happening with her, and they will try to treat it cooperatively with the cycle. They would not do anything to suppress her cycle. This slide actually shows us examples of 4 different charts, 4 different cycles. I'm not a medical consultant, but just by looking at it, I can tell there are really alarming things, red flags that need definitely referral to the medical consultant for evaluation and treatment. So the first one shows what we refer to as a limited mucus cycle. So this couple has a very limited time to get pregnant. If this couple is using a system like the rhythm method, counting from day 1 to day 14 as days of fertility, they will never get pregnant, because the time that this woman is fertile is really after day 14. And the fact that she has a limited mucus cycle can be due to other underlying causes. The second one shows what we refer to as a short post-peak phase or a short luteal phase. And this actually indicates we have a luteal phase defect. So the progesterone levels in the post-peak phase are not rising as they should be. And this actually can be seen in women who are at high risk of miscarriage. One of the first cases that St. Gianna Center had in Manhattan many years ago was a client who had multiple miscarriages, and she had a chart exactly like this one. So before undergoing any evaluation, the chart revealed to the doctor immediately the problem, and she was helped and she was able to carry her pregnancy to term. The third one shows what we refer to as a premenstrual spotting, which means very light or brown spotting before the period begins, and this can be associated with low progesterone. The fourth one shows unusual bleeding. You can see there's a lot of red stems. This unusual bleeding actually can be due to hormonal problems or fibroids or even cancer. So as you can see, tracking a woman's cycle can be very effective for her to know more about her cycles, and it's effective in a woman's gynecological maintenance of her health. NaProTechnology offers real solutions to real problems like infertility, menstrual cramps, PMS, ovarian cysts, polycystic ovarian disease, repetitive miscarriage, postpartum depression, prematurity prevention, hormonal abnormality, and other problems. NaProTechnology looks at infertility in a different way than the culture that we live in. It looks at infertility and treats infertility with a disease-based approach. So if couples not able to get pregnant, they want to try to find a problem and help them get pregnant. We live in a culture that considers fertility as a disease, not as a gift from God. And to help you understand that, when we all have a strong headache, we might recourse to taking Tylenol or Advil to ease that headache. There is a problem, we try to treat it with the pill. What is the problem that this culture is trying to treat with birth control pill? The use of birth control pill to stop a couple from getting pregnant sends a message like this one: fertility is a disease and we need to suppress it, we need to stop it. When in reality, our fertility is a gift from God that we need to appreciate and take care of it. The disease that we need to really treat is infertility, which is basically the inability of couple to get pregnant on their own without any artificial reproductive techniques like in vitro fertilization. This table actually shows the success rate of NaProTechnology versus in vitro fertilization. When a couple struggles with infertility and they come to NaProTechnology, as I said, they try to find the problem and treat it. So if a woman has endometriosis, NaProTechnology medical consultant would do a laparoscopy to remove that endometriosis, and the success rate can go from 56.7 to 76.4%. However, the in vitro fertilization success rate in cases of endometriosis is much lower, 21.2%. In the case of polycystic ovaries, the rate can go from 62.5, the success rate of NaPro, from 62.5 to 8%. The success rate of in vitro fertilization is 25.6%. With tubal occlusion, it can be 38.4% with NaPro and 27.2% by in vitro fertilization. So as you can see from this comparison, in vitro fertilization is not as successful as a lot of people think it is. Unfortunately, it's more popular, it's easier, and it's what every doctor recommends, except our NaProTechnology medical consultant. So it's important to understand that NaProTechnology's approach is completely different than the regular doctors who would consider in vitro fertilization. This actually comes from a summary table that was done by the Popol 6 Institute for the Study of Human Reproduction. They also show here the success rate in cases like a premenstrual syndrome. So example, PMS, NaProTechnology can treat up to 95.2% the success rate of it. The current medical approach and current treatment can have a success rate of about 43%. So imagine the difference here. Imagine when young women are suffering with PMS for so many days before their period, they're not being offered the treatment that are effective like NaProTechnology. Using systems like FertilityCare has a lot of positive effects on the woman's health, on the woman's knowledge, their couple's health and couple's relationship. It increases women's knowledge and it empowers her with that knowledge because she becomes in tune with her body. She becomes able to understand more what is happening in her body. It generates a greater respect for her fertility. That's why we say we teach fertility care, fertility appreciation, because we help her respect her fertility, not suppress it, but appreciate it and take care of it. It's a shared system between the spouses, even though the woman has to do the tracking of the biological marker in her body, yet it's a shared system that both of them have to put to use. It requires self-mastery in the relationship, which opens the door for the couple to express their love to each other in different ways. With systems like Create and Model Fertility Care, all these NFP methods, the children are really seen as a gift and they are being not just wanted but loved. It promotes healthy lifestyle because the couple, the woman who's using it, is really trying to go with her cycles, go to work cooperatively with her cycle and not against it, not suppress it. It increased communication between the couples, and that's what we refer to as a spice. Before I talk in more detail about spice, there were some statistics done a few years ago about the rate of divorce among users of NFP and users of contraception, and it showed that people who use contraception have a divorce rate greater than 50%, and people who use methods like the Create and Model system have a divorce rate of less than 5%. And that's probably due to the fact that there's a lot of communication that goes on among users of natural family planning system. So SPICE is a tool that we use in strengthening marriages, and it helps couples to learn to communicate on all levels. A lot of us think that we can only live our sexuality just with the intimate act of intercourse with our spouses. Well, this is the highest way of communicating with our spouses, being united with them. However, our sexuality is multidimensional. It's on all those 5 levels: spiritual, physical, intellectual, communicative, and emotional. And we're called to be sexually whole 24/7. So we're supposed to be communicating with each other on those levels the whole time. We're supposed to show affection to each other in all those different levels. I want to share with you a great story about Spice, a couple who were struggling in their marriage and they started learning the Create and Model system, but the husband was not in favor of that. So he wasn't coming to the follow-ups, and one day he ripped the client's chart, his wife's chart, because he didn't want her to continue on doing that, and he threw it in the garbage. And his wife went to bed sleeping. Before, I forgot to mention that before they started charting, they went to their priest to ask for his help in their marriage. And the priest tried, and he got to a point of telling them, your marriage needs a visit from the Blessed Mother to save it. So the man was mad at his wife. He didn't want to learn this. He ripped the chart and she went to bed sleeping. The next day he woke up feeling guilty. So he took the chart from the garbage, he took it out, he brought it to work and glued it, taped it all together, and came back home in the evening and asked his wife, what is it that you want me to do? And the wife asked her husband to come with her to the follow-up sessions. And at the follow-up sessions, we teach the couple about Spice. We challenge them to work on strengthening their relationship with Spice. So like example, if I'm seeing a client today and I see them in 2 weeks, I can challenge them sometimes. I want you to go and do surprise date night for your wife and come back and share with me how did that work. Or different activities that we challenge them to do for each other. After a few months of coming to the follow-up session, the woman came and she dropped the chart in front of her practitioner and she told her, this was the visit from the Blessed Mother that saved our marriage. So Spice has proven to be a tool, and I can, if time allows in the Q&A, I can share more about something that my husband, Father Peter, and I, we do daily using a Spice, and that had helped us so much to grow in our relationship. This is an example of different activities in all those 5 levels that I share with my clients to just help them live Spice, add Spice to their relationship on every level. I'm going to end this talk with sharing a few testimonies. This is a book called Women Healed, has in it testimonies of 50 women and their husbands whose lives have been enriched by the medical care, education, and research efforts of the St. Paul VI Institute for the Study of Human Reproduction. I have started back in June recording episodes from this book, reading it with other practitioners and educators. You can find them on my YouTube channels or even on my podcast channel. So this is a story of a couple who, before they got married, the woman went to the OBGYN and asked for a prescription for the pill because that's what everyone was doing. So she didn't even think that she should be different. She just assumed that's the only choice given to her. A few months into their marriage, she didn't get her period, and she started really being afraid, thinking she might be pregnant, especially that they were planning on not having children for at least 5 years. So after she cried a little bit, she decided to take the booklet that comes with the birth control pill and read it. And this is exactly what she said. The small booklet explained exactly what the pill was doing to my body. I was sick. When I made the decision to go on the pill, it was not an educated decision. I had not even given a thought to the process of how it worked. I simply was following the social norm. I could not believe I was dumping these chemicals into my body. There was nothing natural about the pill. No wonder why infertility is on the rise. So she decided to stop taking the birth control pill, and they start charting with the created model system. Although they were joking that they're going to be pregnant immediately, because that's what a lot of people think. If they're not using contraceptive method, it's not going to work. However, it worked for them for 5 years. They avoided having children, and then they avoided getting pregnant. And then when they were ready, they had their first and their second child. And when they tried third time, they had a secondary infertility, but they were ahead of themselves. They were able to treat it, and they had a third child. And she says, actually, it is gratifying to have one method that can be used in all stages of my reproductive life: avoiding pregnancy, achieving pregnancy, breastfeeding, and even, as we were about to find out, infertility. Her only regret is not entering into their marriage with a created model. She also adds something: we came to know, to learn about planning our family, but we got something more. As a part of the fertility care system, we learned about spice and how all five aspects of spice make up our true marital sexuality. And this is true gift of the method. This is another story of women who are struggling with PMS. When a woman has those hormonal problems, she can be miserable and she can make everyone miserable around her. So it's very important for us to know that women can be helped with PMS, with postpartum depression, when her hormone levels are not in the right range. This woman had a passive death wish. She wanted to die. She felt so miserable. She came across the institute. She got her hormone tested, and the nurse at the institute asked her what she called the $1 million question. She said to her, "Debbie, your hormones are so very low. Are you ever depressed?" And she started the HCG injection, and she was completely different. And she commented, "I love this life." This is another story of a couple who had 4 miscarriages, and they couldn't figure out the problem. They said it's common, there can be something wrong with the baby, or just plain bad luck. However, once you start charting Dr. Hilger's, based on the chart, expected endometriosis, which he removed during laparoscopy, from the hormonal profile, he showed low progesterone and low estrogen level. And after he treated all of that, this couple got pregnant naturally, and they end up with the twin sons, 2 boys, and they named one of them Thomas after Dr. Thomas Hilgers because they owed him treating this infertility problem. This is an example of a chart from a woman who was having complete dry cycles. As you can see, it's all green, all dry. She was having a history of infertility for like 7 years. Dry cycle, 7 years of infertility. She was not seen by Dr. Hilder. She was just charting, and a nurse prescribed to her vitamin B6. She recommended it as a mucus enhancing supplement. And as you can see, intercourse on that day here resulted in a pregnancy, and they were able to carry that pregnancy to term. So sometimes simple things can really help make a difference. This is an example that shows how physical stress can affect ovulation cycle, like heavy exercise, weight loss program. They can eventually make a woman's chart completely dry. Emotional stress also can impact the cycle. This story is from a book called An Insider Look at the War on Women. It's Dr. Hilger's titled it Media Cover-Up. This is a story of a young woman who was having severe menstrual cramps. She had severe endometriosis. She was 19 years old, not married, not engaged, not dating. So she went to her OBGYN to tell him about those pain. And he told her that this is going to impact her fertility. So he recommended that she gets pregnant. So through in vitro fertilization, she got pregnant from a stranger donor, and she had a twins born. And she continued on having those pain after she had her baby. This was a story on the front page of a magazine. Dr. Hildreth had similar case, a married woman who had severe endometriosis wanting to get pregnant. He treated her endometriosis, and after treating her endometriosis, she got pregnant. He sent the story to the newspaper. They refused to publish it. They didn't want women to know about alternatives to what they're being offered. So there's a really media cover up. There is a real war on women, not allowing women to know about something that is effective for their health. So help us spread the word, because together we can build a better future and stronger marriages. Together we can let people know about this. You can spread the word by following us on social media and be tuned to our next series of webinars, which is going to happen in 2023. I still don't have the exact dates, but I'm hoping to have Dr. Teresa Hildreth with us, the daughter of Dr. Thomas Hildreth. So we're on social media, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube. We try to spread the word as much as we can. If anyone of you would like to learn more, we're offering introductory session for free online to help people get to know more about this. It is time for us to really help women know more about this, and couples, and be empowered with this knowledge. And this will bring my presentation to an end, and we will open it for question now. Thank you, everyone. I already saw in the chat we had a question from Teddy. How can we bring this to teenagers? Thank you, Teddy. That's a very good question. Actually, this past Saturday in Houston, I gave a talk to the teenagers. We have a presentation for teenagers called The Wonder of Eve. And this is for high school students, and it helps them understand more about their fertility and appreciate it. We have another one for younger girls ages 11 to 13. And both the presentations can be offered to young girls either in a setup of school assembly or classroom, or youth groups in parishes or in whatever gatherings, or they can be planned as a mother-daughter tea event. So thank you for asking. Any other questions? Okay, from my personal experience, can I explain more how spice helps strengthen marriage? Yes, I wish if my husband is right here. He was finishing marriage preparation session, but I can tell you what Father Peter and we do every night. We do something that we call nightly house meeting. So the idea of the house meeting came from the Franciscan Friars of the Renewal, who do a weekly house meeting to discuss preaching requests in their friary. We do that every night, but not just to discuss certain things. We actually have specific questions that we go over. He asked the question, and then I ask him the question after I answer them. Share 3 blessings of the day. What did you like the least? If anything happened today, what would you have done differently? How can I serve you better? And how can I love you more? Since we start doing this, not only we realize we're spending a greater quality time together, and we're able to communicate on every level, but I can speak of myself. It helped me to kind of, during the day, if something goes wrong, not to get mad and express it right away, like, why did you do this? You should have not done it. But to wait in the evening for when he asked me, how can I serve you better? And I'm like, you could have done this differently today. That's how you would have served me better. So that's one example of how it had helped us. Another thing is we try on his day off to really do something together so that we can be spending quality time together. We can just be together, just communicating on every level. So this is one of the ways that we've been using spice every day. And by the way, when we go over these questions, we're holding hands and we end them with a prayer. We end up praying one Our Father, one Hail Mary, one Hail Joseph. So by doing it, we're really using all the spice aspect, the spiritual, the physical, the intellectual, and the emotional. Sometimes it can take us 5 minutes, sometimes it can take us 40 minutes, and sometimes I can be crying while we're going through it. But we have found it to be really very helpful for our marriage. Thank you for that question. Okay, how did this fertility care system come to existence? Okay, so this actually came to existence in response to the challenge of humanity. So the Catholic Church does not approve of contraception. The Catholic Church let me explain it a little bit better first. The church believes that sexuality within marriage has two ends: procreation and bonding. So when a couple come together in the intimate relationship, they have to be open to life. Not doesn't mean life is going to come from every act of intercourse, but there is an openness to life through every act of intercourse. Whenever life and love are being separated, we are working against God's plan for married love. And that's what contraception does. And that's what Pope Paul VI in 1968 confirmed that it's not acceptable in marriage in his encyclical called the Humani Vitae. And when he released that encyclical, he actually made appeal to men of science, asking them to help him bring this teaching to people, to lay people. And he actually there was actually one doctor, one senior medical doctor, and I'm going to show you his picture, who actually felt called to do something. So this is Dr. Thomas Holgers, and this is what he actually said about Humani Vitae. He said when he first read the Humani Vitae as a senior medical student, the Pope's words struck a real chord with him, both as Catholic and soon as to be a member of the medical profession, because he was studying to be OBGYN. And he felt the call to do something. And as a result of that, we have today the Create Model Fertility Care System, and we have NaProTECHNOLOGY. So we really came to existence as a response to the challenge of a Humani Vitae in accordance with the teaching of the Catholic Church. Which reminds me of something important that a lot of people tend to forget. If the Church says this is not good, the Church offers a better alternative, more empowering, more beautiful thing. The Church does not say no because the Church just wants to deprive us of things. No, but the Church says no to things that are not good to us. Same way you biological parents would say no to your children for things because you know there are better options for them. Thank you. Okay, can I explain more the Church teaching regarding avoiding pregnancy? Okay, thank you. So a lot of people actually think that the Church would not approve at all people avoiding getting pregnant. That if couple use a system like this one to avoid pregnancy, they're really going against God's plan. It's important to understand that when a couple use a system like this, they're not doing anything against God's plan because they're not putting barriers, they're not putting devices, they're just working with their body the way God designed it. And a lot of people think that the Church would want people to always try to get pregnant when it's not the reality. The Church wants people to be in tune with God's will for them, to discern with God what's His will for them. So when they avoid getting pregnant using a method like this one, they're being open to life at the same time, and they're letting God decide when to bring life from their act of intercourse or not. So it's not against the Catholic teaching Church to avoid getting pregnant using methods like this method. I can imagine that NaProTECHNOLOGY is significantly more cost-effective than IVF. I can imagine that the cost would vary depending on the issues from patient to patient. But could you give a range of the possible costs? Actually, a lot of people assume that if they're going through NaProTECHNOLOGY treatment, that it means they're going to have to pay out of pocket and it's going to be costly. The treatment of NaProTECHNOLOGY are covered by insurance, like all other treatments with your OBGYN. So I really don't know what the cost would be because it varies on how much the insurance would cover from it. But like I can speak myself, when I had a laparoscopy many years ago in Omaha with Dr. Hilgers, I think we had to pay just like a few $100s after the insurance covered the entire cost, a few thousand. So it's not more costly than other methods because it's covered by insurance as well. Because our medical consultants are trained doctors. They are doctors who go through medical school like all other doctors. They just take an additional training to become NaProTECHNOLOGY. Thank you for your question. Any other questions? I know we have with us, but I'm not going to put her on the spot, but I saw with us earlier. I don't know if she left, but there was a NaProTECHNOLOGY medical consultant who was with us. Yeah, I don't see her any longer. I can't see with so many icons on the screen. I just want to add something about the avoiding pregnancy question that was asked earlier. A lot of people think if they use system like those systems, they're gonna end up with a lot of kids. Or they see people who use systems like these systems and they have like more than 2 kids. So they think it's a failure of the method. It's not. Couples who use those methods are more open to life. They want to build the church, so that's why they have more children. A lot of people think that such thing is not acceptable by the church because the church says you should have 10 and 12 kids, and that's not true. Pope Paul VI spoke about responsible parenthood. He said that under grave conditions, psychological, physiological, physical, economic, couple can decide to avoid getting pregnant or even to not get pregnant any longer. So the church teaches something called responsible parenthood. The church does not approve, like example, the situation in Lebanon, and let's say a couple who get paid 2 million Lebanese pound, and they have already 4 kids to go and have another 4 kids, and they cannot put them in school, they cannot provide them with diapers. This is not responsible parenthood. The church does not approve situations like the church actually ask and recommends that the couple discern with God under those conditions the size of their family. Where can we find doctors and people to help chart? Thank you. So if you go on FertilityCare.org, there you can find NaProTECHNOLOGY medical consultant. You can find practitioners. If you also go on my website, cedaroflebanonfcc.com, under resources, I have a link to it, and I have the contact of many practitioners and NaProTECHNOLOGY medical consultant. Thank God these days we have a lot of them all over. We have practitioners who teach virtually. I'm actually teaching clients in Sri Lanka now because of Zoom. We can do that all over the world. Yes. So, and the time difference is so weird. I have to keep track of the time difference between here and Sri Lanka because it's not just like 5 hours, like 6.5 or something like that. So, yes, with things being open, even telehealth medicine is an option that a lot of NaProTECHNOLOGY medical consultants offer. So it's available. It's available for every woman, for every girl, for every couple. And we should make it known for people because people deserve to know this information. Any other comments, questions? You can send your questions to Linda. She's putting them in the chat, or you can just put them directly in the chat. I'm trying to remember a few of the key questions that were asked to me this past weekend in Houston, San Antonio, so that I can just touch on them and help everyone here. I think one of the questions people were asking about the teaching, about how they learn the charting. So to learn the charting, you sign up for an introductory session. And then after that, we have what we call follow-up sessions. And the time commitment, people were wondering about the time commitment. It really adds about 30 seconds to a woman's visit to the restroom. And then at the end of the day, she just have to mark the most fertile sign on her chart. Can NaProTECHNOLOGY help couples struggling with infertility when there is a male factor? Okay. There are 2 cases. If you remember in one of the slides, I showed the success rate and it was going up to 80%. So the 20% can be due to tube being completely destroyed, damaged, the fallopian tubes, they cannot do anything. Or if there is a 0 sperm. In those cases, NaProTECHNOLOGY cannot help at all. However, if there is a male factor with low sperm count, NaProTECHNOLOGY can help. Actually, I want to read the numbers from this book. We have this book called The NaProTECHNOLOGY Revolution that goes over all cases. This is a case of a pregnancy when the count of the sperm was 771,000. the sperm count is usually 15 and over 15 million. So this is a very low sperm count, and the effective sperm count was 189,000. And NaProTECHNOLOGY had helped the woman treat any problem that was there, and at the same time the man was being seen by urologists, and that coupled with this very low effective sperm count, got pregnant. There was also pregnancies recorded in severe oligospermia, 30,000 and 50,000 effective sperm count. So yes, it can, but it's very important to keep in mind that we never say it's 100% because we cannot promise anything. We know that God is the author of life, but we know that our doctors are dedicated to finding the problem and helping couples get pregnant naturally. Any other questions, comments? The other day when I was giving that talk in Houston, Father Edward was surprised that the men had so many questions. They wanted to know more. They were like, how come? So here we're not having a lot of men asking questions. But yeah, this is something that men also need to know about it. I know Sayyidina Zaidan mentioned that he heard me giving this talk in Kirki in Lebanon. So I would like to ask you to keep these efforts in your prayers. We're actually working on planning an education phase, hopefully soon in Lebanon, because we have a few people interested in that. We're just working out the budget, trying to get some fundraising because, you know, with the economic situation in Lebanon, it's hard for people to afford the tuition. So if you can please keep those efforts in your prayers with the hope that I'm very hopeful that hopefully by May of 2023, we can have an education phase in Lebanon. If God wills it now, since we've already started with this from 2018. Okay, what is the time commitment, steps, and cost to learn to charge site? Okay, so there are some costs for learning. They can vary from practitioner to another, so they can range from like $40 to $75. In some places, they're actually covered by the insurance. Some of us give receipts that the client can submit to their insurance and they get reimbursed by it. So the cost can vary. The steps are, the first one is introductory session, and then after that we have 5 follow-ups in the first 3 months, and then 3 follow-ups for the rest of the year. So the time commitment basically is just those sessions, which is 1 hour every 2 weeks, the first 3 months, and just that extra 30 seconds when a woman visits the restroom so that she can she can observe the biological marker and be able to chart it at the end of the day. Can NaPro help those who are noticing premenopausal symptoms? Yes, we have hormonal replacement therapy. So yes, our NaProTECHNOLOGY medical consultant can also help in women who are approaching menopause. Yes, I don't know the whole scheme of it, but I know that they are able to help women with hormonal replacement therapy. And I just want to say something based on this question, and also to help people understand with PMS. When our medical consultant find a problem with the hormones, they try to treat it with hormones that are very similar in their chemical structure to the hormones that a woman's body produces. So bioidentical hormones. Because if they were to use synthetic hormones with completely different chemical structure, like the hormones in the birth control pill, those hormones can have a very bad side effect on the woman's body. So they would do whatever hormonal replacement therapy, whatever progesterone treatment, they would use things that would not have a lot of side effects, the minimum side effects on women. On that point with PMS, I just want to tell you that so many of us women, and I'm sure if I had asked you to raise your hand, so many of you would raise your hand now, have grown up our life struggling with irritability, with depression, with insomnia, with headache, with different symptoms that we get before our period begins, and we were told this is something normal. And I always thought it was normal until I learned the creative model system, and I find out that this is legitimate medical this is legitimate medical condition which is due to progesterone deficiency. So, and with the Creighton model system and NaProTECHNOLOGY, it can be treated, and women and girls don't have to keep suffering from PMS. The treatment for endometriosis is usually surgery, and they can do more hormones, but it's usually the laparoscopy to remove it completely. Even the mild endometriosis, our doctors would consider removing it. So that's the major thing that they do for endometriosis, and if there is a need for other hormonal therapy, they would do that, but the major one is laparoscopy. I think it's, if we have no more common question, what do you think, Linda, Sayedna? I think it's about time. No more questions. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for the opportunity to share that with everyone, Linda, with Sayedna.
Thank you, Maurice. Thank you for your presentation and for taking the time as well.
Thank you. Last question, is there a site or resources we can look into the bioidentical hormones? If you can email me, if you have my contact information, and I'll try to get you something for that. There was something that I would appreciate if people can do, and I just remembered it now. I'm gonna put a link in the chat. If you're able to click on that link, and whenever you can, please complete the evaluation form. That would help us to know how we can serve you better. So this is on Cedar of Lebanon website under talks, and I'm putting the link in the chat for everyone. So, and thank you everyone for being here.
Thank you,
So
Maurice. Thank you for a beautiful presentation. Is Bishop Zaidan, would you like to close with a prayer? Before we go, Maurice, did you want to mention anything else about your future talks?
Well, I don't have the exact date yet. So if you follow us on social media, or you keep checking the website, you can find out more. It's going to be a series of webinars with doctors, with educators, with couples sharing their own testimony. So, and women and young girls, so we can spread the word more about that. Thank you.
And also another one coming up for the office. Maurice, thank you so much for this beautiful and life-changing talk, because I do believe there's so much information that so many of us don't know about. So I appreciate that, and I hope to have more of these meetings where we can spread it even further. There's so many that don't know. And I also wanted to mention that we do have another talk next month. It will be on the other end of the spectrum. It will be for end-of-life care. And so, and that will be a talk in November. There is a flyer coming, and that will be given by Vivian Acal. So I will be getting information out. We will hopefully be able to spread the word, but we all really, really appreciate all of you being here. And thank you, Bishop Zaidan. Would you like to close us with a prayer?
God bless you. I think may the Holy Family guide us and be a beautiful inspiration to do all those things. Almighty God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, protect us and accompany us every day of our life, now and forever. God bless you all. Thank you.
Thanks.
God bless. Thank you. Thank you, Maurice. God bless. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Sayed.
Bye-bye. God bless you.